Moccasin Flats will soon be getting bigger following a decision from the BC Supreme Court last week. The city went before the courts seeking an injunction to have both Moccasin Flats at the end of 5th Avenue and the splits on George Street dismantled. In his decision, Chief Justice Hinkson writes, "It is apparent that very few of the emergency shelter beds are low barrier, and it appears that many of the homeless persons in the city are ineligible to stay in at least some of the shelters." He goes on, "While the city contends that the availability of 81 shelter beds in the city is sufficient to house the encampment occupants, I am not satisfied that these shelter spaces are in fact accessible to all of the occupants of the encampments. It's not something anyone would argue with, regardless of your politics around the homeless."
The ruling is understandable. The reality is there isn't enough housing as of yet. I think if we had a preponderance of housing for the homeless, then a full injunction would have been granted in a New York second.
People are not being criminalized for being homeless. That's what this campaign was about, was criminalizing people for being homeless. So we've got a victory in that. But honestly, we have no win until everyone has housing, and we are still in the situation where we have lack of affordable housing, discrimination and racism prevents housing, there's precarity around work, and so we haven't resolved the crisis.
Justice Hinkson did, however, decide this camp will have to come down by the end of the week. He wrote, "Given the migration of most of the occupants of the George Street encampment to the encampment at Lower Patricia, I find that it is unnecessary for the George Street encampment to continue. Its residents can move to the Lower Patricia encampment."
Well, I think what happens now is not only to utilize some of the spaces, but is to continue to build up more of homelessness, or perhaps homes, if you will, for a lot of the homeless people, and low barrier, non-barrier, and then providing wraparound services.
John Zakowski says the Downtown Business Advocacy Group attended a meeting of the Safe, Clean and Inclusive Community Committee and received a thorough update from BC Housing.
There's a lot of work going on. Yes, I'm a rep for the independent businesses, but bottom line is we're also common sense people. This stuff takes time, but as long as we see forward motion, that's what we're seeing. Forward motion. Now we got to get the city to start addressing the criminal aspect of what's happening in the downtown community.
The city declined to speak on camera regarding the decision, sticking only with a written statement issued Friday, saying it will work with BC Housing to ensure housing before the cold weather sets in. Cheryl Jan, CKPG News.